Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Today we are going to start our new unit, which is organic chemistry. The first chapter in this unit is elemental analysis. Today we are going to talk about elemental qualitative analysis. By the end of this video, you will be able to define organic compounds and describe how pyrolysis and incomplete combustion allow the qualitative analysis of the element carbon in an organic compound. The materials needed during this session are a pen and a notebook and a worksheet you are supplied with that includes the main ideas and terms mentioned in the video. Now, what is common between charcoal, sugar, petroleum and oil, and polyester filaments? All of these substances are organic compounds. What is an organic compound? An organic compound is a compound which contains one or more carbon atoms and derives from living things. It comes from living things. But how can we identify organic compounds? We can use elemental analysis. But what is elemental analysis? Elemental analysis is the study of the structure and the properties of organic compounds. It aims to determine the nature of the elements present in an organic compound, as well as to know how much of each element is present. We want to know what elements are found in this organic compound and how many atoms of each element is present in this compound. Elemental analysis can be divided into two branches. The first one, which I mentioned in the beginning of the video, which is qualitative elemental analysis, and the second one is quantitative elemental analysis. Qualitative elemental analysis aims to determine the nature of the elements present in an organic compound, while quantitative elemental analysis aims to determine the number of each element present in an organic compound. What is elemental qualitative analysis? It is divided into pyrolysis, incomplete combustion, complete combustion, and mineralization. Pyrolysis is the decomposition of an organic compound by heat in the absence of air, in the absence of oxygen exactly. It allows the identification of carbon and also hydrogen and oxygen. We'll see how next. Incomplete combustion is the reaction of an organic compound in the presence of a limited amount of oxygen gas. The amount of oxygen is limited. We have a small amount of oxygen gas. It allows the identification of carbon and hydrogen. Complete combustion is the reaction of an organic compound with an excess amount of oxygen. Gas, oxygen is in excess. That's why it is complete combustion. It allows the identification of carbon and hydrogen. Mineralization, it allows the identification of some elements such as nitrogen, sulfur, and halogens, which are chlorine, iodine, and bromine. Now we'll see an application on elemental qualitative analysis, which is pyrolysis of sugar, which is a reaction of decomposition of sugar, as pyrolysis is performed in order to identify the presence of the element carbon in sugar. Now, what are the materials needed for this pyrolysis? First, we need a test tube, a Bunsen burner, sugar, and a tongue. Don't forget that pyrolysis is done in the absence of air. Let's see this video. This is sugar in the test tube and being heated in the absence of air. A black deposit appears in the test tube, and we can see that there are droplets of water on the walls of the test tube. Here we can see the droplets of water and the test tube. Now let's interpret this video. To what does the black powder obtained in the experiment correspond? And what does the formation of water droplets in the pyrolysis of sugar indicate? The black powder formed during pyrolysis is carbon, C, while the formation of water droplets during pyrolysis indicates the presence of hydrogen H and oxygen O, which combine to form H2O. We can conclude that sugar is an organic compound since, using pyrolysis, we identified that it contains carbon atoms. It also contains hydrogen and oxygen atoms, which combine to form water. Now we're going to talk about incomplete combustion, and we will take an example, turpentine, which is a kind of oil. Don't forget that incomplete combustion is the reaction of an organic compound in the presence of a limited amount of oxygen gas, and it allows the identification of carbon and hydrogen. The materials needed during this experiment are 2 watch glasses, a Bunsen burner, a match, turpentine, and a tongue. The procedure followed during this experiment: first we place 2 milliliters of turpentine on a watch glass. Using a match, carefully flame the turpentine. Hold the second watch glass above the flame produced. We can observe that the turpentine burns with a yellow flame and produces a black smoke, and a black deposit is formed on the watch glass, which is held above the flame. Now let's interpret this experiment. We see that a black deposit is formed on the watch glass due to the incomplete combustion of turpentine. This substance also contains the element carbon, so by this incomplete combustion we identified the presence of the element carbon in turpentine. We can conclude that turpentine is an organic compound since, using incomplete combustion, we could identify the presence of the element carbon. Now we're going to talk about the third type of qualitative elemental analysis, which is complete combustion, and we will take an example, ethyl alcohol. Don't forget that complete combustion is the reaction of an organic compound with an excess amount of oxygen gas. The objective of this experiment is to identify the presence of the elements carbon and hydrogen. The materials needed during this experiment are 2 test tubes, a glass tubing with a bulb, an attached clamp, a stand, ethyl alcohol, which is pure 95 degrees, clear lime water, anhydrous copper 2 sulfate, and a Bunsen burner. Now let's watch this video about the complete combustion of an organic compound, which is ethyl alcohol.
Let us see the procedure of detecting carbon and hydrogen. Heat the compound strongly. The evolved gases are passed through a delivery tube containing a bulb with anhydrous copper sulfate. Then, it passed into lime water taken in a test tube. If carbon is present, it forms CO2, carbon dioxide gas. The carbon dioxide gas turns lime water milky. The reactions involved in this process are CaOH twice plus CO2 gives rise to CaCO3 plus H2O. If hydrogen is present in the compound, it forms H2O vapor, or water vapor. Water vapor, when passed over white anhydrous CuSO4, it turns blue by forming CuSO4, 5H2O. The reactions involved in this process are CuSO4 plus 5H2O gives rise to CuSO4, 5H2O.
What we observed in this video is that carbon dioxide turns lime water milky, and the anhydrous copper 2 sulfate, anhydrous it means without water, turns from white to blue in the presence of water. What does the formation of water and carbon dioxide in the combustion of ethyl alcohol indicate? The combustion of ethyl alcohol is complete. It takes place according to the equation C2H5OH, which is ethyl alcohol, plus 3 oxygen molecules give 2CO2 plus 3H2O. The oxygen used is an excess. It's very important to note that oxygen is an excess. That's why it is a complete combustion. During this combustion, the carbon is completely converted into carbon dioxide, CO2, that causes the turbidity of lime water due to the formation of calcium carbonate, CaCO3, according to the equation CO2, carbon dioxide, plus CaOH2 give CaCO3 plus H2O, which is turbid lime water due to the presence of CaCO3. Consequently, there is formation of water vapor, which causes the white anhydrous copper-2 sulfate to transform into hydrated copper-2 sulfate according to the equation 5H2O, 5 water molecules, plus CuSO4, which is the anhydrous copper-2 sulfate, gives CuSO4, 5H2O, which is the hydrated copper-2 sulfate, which has a blue color, while the anhydrous copper-2 sulfate has a white color. We can conclude that the complete combustion of ethyl alcohol identifies the presence of elements carbon and hydrogen and shows that ethyl alcohol is an organic compound. Now let's sum up the ideas of this video. First, pyrolysis is the decomposition upon burning in the absence of oxygen. The pyrolysis, besides being an evidence for the presence of carbon atoms in an organic compound, it is also an evidence for the presence of two other elements, which are hydrogen and oxygen, which combine to form water. Pyrolysis and incomplete combustion enable us to identify the presence of the element carbon in organic compounds. The complete combustion of ethyl alcohol identifies the presence of elements carbon and hydrogen. C is produced in the form of CO2, which is identified by clear lime water since it turns turbid according to the equation CO2 plus CaOH2 gives CaCO3 and H2O, and hydrogen is produced in the form of H2O and it is identified by the anhydrous copper 2 sulfate, which is white since it turns blue as hydrated copper 2 sulfate according to the equation 5H2O plus CuSO4 give CuSO4 5H2O, which has a blue color. This video was prepared by teacher Rania Taini, recorded by Mr. Mustafa Tlais, and supervised by teacher Hiba Badawi. Thank you for your listening.